I've been creating only beginner tutorials on this channel. In this video, I'll just show you how I approach this scene, so you might need to have some fine understanding of the basics already. So let's get started. I started with a cylinder and made it really low poly. Then I tried to make it look like a wood log by adding a loop cut and moving that slightly. Then I simply duplicated this log on top of each other and created the shape for a well. Then for the wooden planks, I used a cube, scaled it, then aligned it nicely above the logs. Same thing for the pillar. Duplicated it 2 times, this will support the roof. Then after selecting all 3 of them, I rotated them 180 degrees. And for the roof board, I used an array modifier. I increased the X value a bit for some gap between them. Alt plus D to duplicate it, and then rotated it 180 degrees on the Z-axis. Then I used a cylinder to create a bucket. Top select, inset, extruded in, scaled down. A loop cut, beveled with Ctrl B. Selected both loops with Alt left click, and beveled them again. Extruded along normals. Then made sure the bucket is properly rotated. The rotation helped with my next step. I selected a face from the top, extruded it out. Then made loop cuts. Both vertical and horizontal ones. Then I selected faces from both sides, and subdivided them. Then I used the knife tool to join the vertices. Press Z to enable cut-through mode. Selected the vertices on both sides, and beveled them to create a nice circle. And through the edge menu, I bridged the edge loops to create a hole. And made the hole a bit bigger. Then to mirror it, I added a loop cut in between. And deleted the half part. Added mirror modifier, chose the right axis, and turned on clipping. For the spindle, added a cylinder. In edit mode, I made a loop cut in the middle, beveled it, then extruded the faces. Same way I created the handle on the left. Extruded the 2 faces. And scaled them down. Before I jumped ahead, I made sure the scene doesn't look terrible in ortho view. Then made the necessary adjustments to make it look alright. And for the rope, I selected Archimedean under curve spirals. Had to enable the extra curve add-on first. Change the settings for the curve in the operator panel. For this scene, I've only touched height, turns, steps, and radius. Aligned it with the spindle. Then in the curve properties, gave it some depth. Then in edit mode, kept extruding the endpoint. Don't worry about the sharp bends for now. Once done, I converted this to a mesh. And then in edit mode, I selected the bending loops. And beveled them for the roundness. I then added a mesh plane, scaled that up. And also added a camera to frame the scene. Changed the view to orthographic and resolution to 1080 by 1080. Used an isometric sphere to create a rock. Then added a decimate modifier to it. Simply duplicated it with Alt plus D, so all the duplicate ones will have the same material. Now before I did the lighting, I split the viewport, and changed the small one to material preview. I used an area light for this scene. Then for the materials, I used only 3 or 4 colors in the whole scene. In the render properties, I usually set the exposure a bit high, and change the look to high contrast, so the colors in the scene pop up better. I also saw some renders online with cool bokeh effects, so I tried to add them. I use a small cylinder, with emission material assigned to it. I could have simply duplicated this, and scattered it around. But I decided to use a different approach, to get more control. A mesh plane with transparent material. And then in its particle settings, selected the cylinder as an instanced object. Rotated it 90 degrees on X-axis, for the right orientation. Then I changed the scale value, and also randomize it. And finally tried different seed values for different variations. You can't see the bokeh blur without some depth of field. So I added an empty first, and set it as the focus object. Then I set the f-stop value to 12. The material preview mode doesn't show you the effect. You need to first enter render mode. That does it for this video. Thanks for watching, let me know what you think of the final result. Also, if you enjoy watching this kind of